Pokemon or Digimon? This has been a lifelong debate with anime lovers from the 1990s and even newer generations to this day. I am here today to settle this debate once and for all. Growing up, I watched the three main animes of the day: Pokemon, Digimon, and of course Yu-Gi-Oh! The Pokemon anime is naturally based off of the game. Digimon's origins comes from a boyish version of the Tamagotchi. Both Tamagotchi and Digimon found their way outside of Japan's borders, but Tamagotchi didn't just resonate with girls, it also resonated with boys, which goes to show you that you can't gender toys. It's time to accept that action figures are just dolls, okay? Out of the animes that I watched at the time, two would just resonate with me for the rest of my life: Yu-Gi-Oh! And Digimon. I didn't play the Pokemon games as a kid. The first one I played was Pokemon Moon, and I didn't even finish it. And that's not because I didn't like the game. I think the reason why I didn't finish it was because I was almost at the end of the game, and the battery on my 3DS died, and I didn't save for a while. So, not wanting to redo all that work, I just didn't continue. I remember liking the game, I just didn't want to do all that progress again. Whenever I talked about Digimon to a Pokemon fan, it was immediately labeled as a Pokemon knockoff. And this trend continues to this day with multiple articles on the internet comparing Digimon to Pokemon. I'm gonna say this: Digimon deserved so much better. Digimon in Japan wasn't even trying to compete with Pokemon. The goal wasn't to rip off Pokemon, and it was really more of a similar concept being created at around the same time. Pokemon did come out a year earlier than Digimon in 1996, but the goal was to be a boyish Tamagotchi. It was really only outside of Japan and where Saban had the distribution rights was when it was trying to compete with Pokemon. Saban did try to compete with Pokemon, fueled by the success of Power Rangers and the initial success of Digimon, and it failed miserably. Pokemon was far more successful, and to try and compete with that because you have your own Mon anime is just doomed to fail. Saban did a disservice to Digimon, and not just for trying to compete with Pokemon either. But let's talk about what Saban did right with Digimon. The localization of the names were brilliant in my opinion. Taichi became Tai, Yamato became Matt, Takeru became TK, Koshiro Izumi became Izzy. They're all keeping aspects of the original Japanese names so that kids outside Japan can easily digest it. Meanwhile, Sora, Joe, Mimi, they all were the same in Japan. They were kept literally the same. And some of the Digimon names were changed too. The best example of this is Frigimon. I don't think kids around that time would have been able to pronounce Yukidarumon. And for the most part, they did the exact same thing with Adventure 02 and Tamers when they adapted those. And the voice acting is not bad. The Japanese voice acting is better, but if you're insistent of listening to it in English, it's not as bad as the other animes from that time period. Their overall story between the two versions is also mostly the same. There are some slight censorships here and there, but that's mostly due to American sensitivity. So why do I think Saban did a disservice to Digimon? The English dub took away all the brilliance that the Japanese version had with the soundtrack. The English soundtrack was very mid at best. It had some bangers, but they were very few and far in between. A perfect example of what I mean is when Paildramon first appears on screen. Let's compare the English version to the Japanese version. There is simply no comparison. Just the fact that the Desperado blasters are timed to the song, it's beautiful. We got this very mundane background music in the English version.
Digimon! Digiball! 2...
When we could have had Braveheart instead!
Agumon! Daichi!
Just so much of the magic and the wonder of Digimon was just lost in the English version, simply because of the soundtrack change. Like I said, there were some bangers. Run Around by Jason Radford is probably the reason why I'm into heavy rock today. But is it enough to redeem the entire soundtrack? No, it's not. I'd rather listen to the Japanese soundtrack. And back to what I said about Saban trying to compete with Pokemon. At first, it didn't try to do that. It was just trying to be its own thing. Eventually, Saban was trying to advertise Digimon as Pokemon, but with an edge. But when you look at the show, for the most part, that's not what it is. I mean, there are some parts where that does come out in the English version, but that's not the majority of it. And there was a lot of that in the 1990s, where they're just trying to be edgy and cool, and it really just came off as cringy. But when you watch the Japanese version, it's not trying to do that. It's trying to tell a story. And as the English version progressed in later and later seasons, it did try to do that more and more, try to be edgier, and it just failed miserably. I also don't like how they changed the terminology. They changed Evolve to Digivolve in the English dub, so that's a little bit more understandable since Digimon and Pokemon came out at around the same time, and they probably wanted to avoid confusion and a potential lawsuit with Pokemon. So that is a little bit forgivable. Just a little bit. I also don't like the level system that they gave to the English dub. Rookie, Champion, Ultimate, and Mega. I tend to use the Japanese level system. Child, Adult, Perfect, and Ultimate. And note how there's 2 different Ultimates in 2 different spots for the progression system. So now we have dub enjoyers and sub-weebs when talking about the ultimate level, having to specify which one they mean. Thanks, Saban. I think my hatred of the English dub started with Digimon the movie, and it has nothing to do with Angela and Anaconda for the most part. I hate that movie because it tried to combine 3 OVAs into a single 90-minute movie. Which, by the way, the runtime does include the Angela Anaconda short at the very beginning. So the runtime is actually shorter than that. You're getting maybe 80 minutes of Digimon. Maybe. And the 3 OVAs aren't even mixed well together. It takes place at 3 different points of the Digimon adventure timeline and has almost no cohesion whatsoever. They tried to tie it all together, but it simply didn't work. Maybe I'll review the movie in another video. Thankfully, we're getting a re-release of the movie that's correcting this abomination. I think I know the reason why Digimon is so commonly referred to as a clone of Pokemon. If you played Pokemon and watched the anime as a kid, and you hear another show called Digimon as a kid, I think most would just simply sign it off as a ripoff of something that they love so dearly. Like, in the mind of a kid, of course Digimon is going to be a ripoff of Pokemon, and they wouldn't want anything to do with Digimon. But if you're someone like me, who watched both Pokemon and Digimon, and didn't really have an opportunity to play the Pokemon games, Digimon probably resonated more with you. My friend Chris played both Pokemon and watched Digimon as a kid, and he likes both. I'm not entirely sure if he likes one more than the other. All I know that he does have a tattoo of Eevee evolving into Vaporeon. So which is better? Pokemon or Digimon? Honestly, the two are incomparable. Digimon deals with a lot heavier topics than Pokemon. Digimon can be lighthearted at times, but it also deals with topics of anger, understanding, loss, guilt, grief, mental health, abuse, and all these complicated topics in a dignified way that ties into the overall story. Something that Pokemon simply isn't equipped to deal with. And from what I've seen, it doesn't really try to. And that's totally fine. Pokemon is about the adventure with the friends that you make along the way. And it's very lighthearted a lot of times from what I remember. It can touch on some of those topics sometimes, but it's only on the lighter side of them. It's not the majority of the show. Here is the biggest difference between Pokemon and Digimon. Pokemon does basically the same thing over and over again. It tweaks the mechanics here and there, but the central core of Pokemon hasn't changed. It's still catch the thing, fight with the thing, stop the evil organization, and defeat all the elite trainers. Ash has been the central character of the anime since the 1990s. Digimon experiments a lot with each and every entry. Digimon Adventure and Digimon Tamers are two very different animes. You're not going to get the same experience with Digimon Ghost Game as you do with Digimon Frontier. You're going to get a different experience every time, and that's consistent even with the Digimon games. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is not the same game as Digimon Survive. These are two very different games. To sum it up, Pokemon is the franchise of familiarity. Digimon is the franchise of experimentation. And there's nothing wrong with either one of them. No one is ripping off anyone when it comes down to these two franchises.
Just to kind of clarify what I mean here is Pokemon's not trying to rip off Digimon, which no one suspected it did, and Digimon's not trying to rip off Pokemon. I do get the whole situation with Pal World right now. That's not what I'm talking about here.
It's a disservice to sign Digimon off as a ripoff of Pokemon for Saban's questionable decisions revolving around the franchise. Digimon is very unique from Pokemon and deserved far better than what it got. It was undeservedly relegated to a Pokemon clone because of Saban's hubris. And I've read plenty of articles on the internet that feed into that narrative when the two aren't even comparable. If it's not obvious already, I love Digimon far more than I like Pokemon. But if you like Pokemon more than Digimon, that's completely fine. Let's just enjoy the things that we like and move on with our lives. If you want my recommendation where to start with Digimon, it would be with Tamers. That is the best Digimon series in the franchise. It could have been topped by Ghost Game, but I have a whole video dedicated to why that didn't happen. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. My name is Vincent, and I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.